Brett Cooper, because why not? Brett Cooper talking about trans people? Never, never. She would never talk about trans people. That would be gross, wouldn't it? Because trans people are gross and cruddy and grody and ew, yucky, and they're trying to transition our children and chop their titties off and ew, gross, trans people, yucky.
My gender is not your costume. I've said this time and time again on the show. I actually think
I forgot that's her main argument about like why trans people are gross. Is like that and like they're converting our children, you know.
Most popular episodes ever of the comment section has that as the title, and you won't just hear that on this show. You will hear speakers like Riley Gaines and Paula Scanlon use this phrase when they're speaking about—
Boo, Riley Gaines. God, talk about a sore loser. Jesus Christ. That woman has literally made the fact that she lost to Leah Thomas, if it was even Leah Thomas, her personality and her entire career. She's made an entire career on the fact that she got 6th place behind Leah Thomas in 5th place.
Women's sports, it is everywhere, and it's everywhere because this phrase speaks volumes. My gender, my sex, is not a plaything that you get to toy with and destroy for your own gain, your own self-fulfillment, and your enjoyment. But as
imagine looking at trans women and going, how dare you insult my sex by trying to imitate it? Like, I would be flattered. Like, you think women are so cool, you're trying to be one? Like, obviously that's not how gender works, but we're speaking from like the perspective of someone who doesn't believe trans people are real, doesn't believe that transgenderism is a real thing you can experience. So, like, the idea that, like, especially because there's a lot of trans women out there who are very beautiful and who, you know, just look like people, you know what I mean? They're not this caricature that conservatives paint of transgender women. And obviously not all trans people pass, and that's not the end-all be-all of being trans. That's not how that works. But obviously from the perspective of transphobic people, the ugly, for lack of a better term, trans people are not ideal for their very bigoted view of the world and of queer people. But I just think it's such a weird... Like, how big-headed are you that you think trans women are trying to be you? Like, ma'am, we don't want to be you. Like, you're kind of disgusting. You're a very ugly person. Like, you're not ugly to look at, but you're a very ugly person. So the idea that trans women want to be you and want to wear your costume is just a little big-headed of you, quite frankly.
Well, no, that is a concept that many have struggled to grasp. However, now they are having to face it firsthand on their own turf. And maybe, just maybe, it'll force them to wake up. Well, actually, who am I kidding? I don't think anything would wake them up at this point, but at least we can try. Before we dive into this literally insane story, though, make sure that you like this video.
No.
Subscribe to the comment section channel, just letting you know so you can decide whether you want them in the room or you want them to watch. All right, so we have talked about this in a few other episodes specifically about porn, but transgender pornography has grown to be one of the biggest and most popular categories in adult entertainment. I mean, just take a look at these numbers. In 2022, the category skyrocketed by 75%. The LGBTQ publication called Them wrote about this, and at the time, they reported that it had made its way to the 7th most popular search. They also said that trans porn's popularity appears to be in keeping with the general trends of the past few years. Last year, the searches for trans grew 141%, with views of the trans category growing by 23%. In 2017, Pornhub also published a report specifically on the popularity of trans porn, and for the most part, and for better or worse, it found that the popularity of trans porn has been steadily increasing since the mid-2010s. And then next year, because that was the 2022 report, in 2023, it bounced up yet again, making its way to the 6th spot in the most popular Pornhub categories. Now, part of that is, of course, because...
hold on, can I see those other ones, please?
Making its way to the 6th spot in the most popular porn.
Well, lesbian being the top, followed by Japanese, ebony, anal, MILF, transgender. Interesting. I mean, I knew MILF was above transgender because in the United States, there's a bunch of different states where that's the most searched term on Pornhub. So, interesting. Unsurprisingly, lesbian is #1 up there. I'm a little surprised that Japanese is that high up, but I don't know why. That just doesn't feel like the thing that you hear like memes and stuff about, you know?
Pornhub categories. Now, part of that is, of course, because the number of trans-identifying individuals...
I mean, I guess maybe... I wonder if the rise in the popularity of anime has anything to do with that. No idea.
Increased dramatically over the past couple of years, but what's most interesting to me is that a lot of porn users say that they have now gravitated toward trans porn because nothing else does it for them anymore. I mean, just Google the question, why do people watch trans porn? Or why does my husband watch so much trans porn? I mean, the questions and the responses that you'll see on Quora and Reddit and all of these blogs are heartbreaking. Because these users are numb to literally everything. They have watched so many hours.
Yeah, but I think hentai would be categorized separately from Japanese porn. Because I think because the search Japanese is like, it was listed there next to like ebony, which is black people. So it's there. People are searching for Japanese women in porn, not necessarily hentai. You know, but like I was just thinking, like, because like anime has become more mainstream lately over the past few years. It's become a bit more mainstream to outwardly like anime. And I wonder if that, like, I don't know if it would have any crossover, but I would be interested to see any statistics or stuff about like how that could be affecting porn consumption.
So
but I also don't know how it's like labeled. Like I don't know if like Japanese is, because it's search terms. It's the most searched term. So never mind. It would be just people looking for specifically Japanese porn, like Japanese people, usually women, in porn.
That normal videos don't get them off anymore. And these are the same people that struggle to have any kind of connection or sexual stimulation in real life. It's the same reason that over time, people will naturally gravitate towards more intense and violent porn, and then we see that replicated in real life because their dopamine levels are so shot because they've spent so many hours getting off to normal things that nothing else works. So if anybody tells you that porn does not have an impact on your body or your hormones or your real life, yes, it does. Thank you very much. End of talk. Now, we actually do have an episode where I reacted to young men talking about their pornography habits. So if this is something that you're grappling with, I'll link that episode below. I think it was really enlightening. These men were really, really vulnerable, which I think is so important. Another person who I think is fantastic to follow in this regard is Matt Fradd. So if you need a good role model and somebody to inspire you as you walk away from a pornography addiction, especially for young men, he is your guy. There is nobody better. But moving on, because this episode is not supposed to be about porn necessarily, I've got plenty of those. You can go watch them. But we have to talk about this trans category and how it is absolutely blown up. And there's a lot of money to be made in this trans category. And because of that, we have to talk about the absolutely absurd outrage that occurred after a couple of cis women infiltrated and co-opted the trans adult content category. So all of this started over the weekend when these two girls, and it has been confirmed that they are girls, posted this video on X. I don't know if you checked out what was in their pants, but there was certainly something there. And it certainly is not natural. Now, they captioned this video, just two boys being silly. And this account obviously has the trans flag in it. Every post that they have made now has the trans flag. They're talking about being trans. They're making it part of their brand. So these women are not trans. That has been confirmed. It has been community noted time and time again now. And allegedly, those are just dildos stuffed in their pants. And this is far from the only video and image that they posted over the weekend. And with each one, my friends, the trans community got progressively more and more angry. And the irony is simply beautiful. Pagliassi the Hated posted about this and said, "Are you ready to hear something completely insane? Female porn models have realized that trans porn is such an incredible cash cow."
Yeah. Okay, now I shouldn't have to explain why this is problematic. Obviously, she's making the argument that, well, trans people pretend to be cis people all the time because they're trans women pretend to be women because they're men and they're not really women all the time. And so now that cis women are pretending to be trans women, suddenly there's a problem. That's obviously her argument. It's a stupid fucking argument. Trans women aren't pretending to be women. Trans women are women. That's not what this is. The reason it's problematic for female cisgender porn models to pretend to be trans women in order to make more money is that trans women exist in a specific part of society where just being alive is dangerous. Trans women are sought out and murdered for being transgender women frequently, and it is very dangerous, and they are a minority group. It's not akin to blackface. I'm not going to try to make that comparison. It's just obviously the first thing that comes to mind when you imagine someone pretending to be a minority. That's kind of like the most well-known example of it. It's not the same, of course. Blackface has a much more egregious history than people pretending to be trans for clout and money. It's simply in bad taste. This is simply more in bad taste, and it's problematic because of the struggles that trans women go through. Like, yes, trans women can sell their bodies for porn. Like, obviously, like, yeah, that's, yeah. But the reason they can do that is because they are considered an oddity. That is why they are a search term. Like, you don't see cis women as a search term on on Pornhub because it's not a commodity, it's not an oddity, it's not something to be like not fantasized, like what's the word I'm looking for? I can't find the word. It's right there. It's just in bad taste. It's just cringy, quite frankly, for cis women to do that. Like, it's just stupid. Like, you're already a woman, you're already a cis woman. Like, you've got tits and vag, and you can use all of that to your advantage in porn, like everybody the fuck else. Let trans women have this one fucking thing, dude. Like, it's honestly just cringy more than it is problematic, in my opinion. Like, it's certainly problematic, but it's not like, oh my god, that's so problematic, like saying a slur or something. Like, it's just more cringe than anything. Like, you're really struggling that hard in the industry that you have to pretend to be transgender. Like, that's so cringe. Like, get a different job. Like,
that's why we had to start this episode talking about that they are now pretending to be transgender. And the males who identify as women are angry at them for identifying as males who identify as women. It sounds insane, but that is literally what is happening. Like, somebody get me off of this stupid, deranged planet. Like, it is so ridiculous. How is this real life? It can't be. Any logical person is going to look at this and say, this is absolutely absurd. This can't be real. Oh, but it can. Because it is. Of course it is. Just listen to these comments. This was my personal favorite.
I mean, something can be absurd and be real at the same time.
Said, seeing cis girls shoving dildos in their pants and pretending to be trans for money makes me so annoyed. My gender isn't your costume. Oh, really? It isn't? That's interesting. I love that you're now using that phrase, because when women have said this to you, you've laughed at us. You've mocked us. You have canceled us. You have physically attacked us. Riley Gaines gave a speech in San Francisco and was literally held hostage because she said, my gender is not your costume. But when somebody else decides to play pretend and co-opt your identity, then it's a problem. Here's another. This one is from April. I've lost friends, family, jobs, opportunities, money, healthcare, and basic respect from random people, been harassed, death threats essayed. For these bitches to masquerade as trans women for profit is disgusting. It's like the trans version of blackface. They don't deserve peace.
Again, I don't like comparing trans stuff to blackface. It obviously, again, is a comparison that will happen. It's an easy comparison to make. Minority groups being discriminated against, so that's why black people and trans people are often like, well, you wouldn't say this about a black person, so why would you say it about a trans person? Like, that happens a lot because it's an easy comparison to make. I don't like doing it. I think it leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, just because the history of racism in this country is so much more pervasive, especially anti-black racism is so much more pervasive in this country than anti-trans anything anywhere. So I don't like that part necessarily. But the first part of this person's tweet is literally the point. Like, there are people out there, there are cisgender people out there who have had their lives ruined because the people around them believed they were trans. Like, so the thought that a cis person would willingly put themselves in that bucket is just insane to me. Like, it's just crazy to me, because it just, like, it's so dangerous. Like, I wish it was an exaggeration to say that that's dangerous, but like this is a real thing that has happened to people before. There are real cisgender people out there who have had rumors spread that they were secretly transgender women, you know, or whatever, that they secretly had a penis, you know, and this shit like that and it's ruined their lives, and it's put them in extreme danger, and that's a real thing that has occurred. And it's hard to wrap my brain around women purposefully putting targets on their back for something like this. Like, it's really dumb. And also, I'm not familiar with the trans porn space. I don't enjoy transgender porn. I don't indulge in it. I don't look for it. I don't like it. It doesn't do it for me. But I don't know the space. Like, I don't know how that space talks and stuff. Like, I don't know. But two boys being silly is not, that doesn't, to me, seem like how trans women would talk about themselves, even in a porn space. Granted, I don't know. Maybe that is how it's talked. I don't know. I don't think so, though. Personally, like, it's hard to completely avoid trans porn because it's everywhere on Pornhub and stuff, and just in the porn space in general. So if you've ever been on a porn website before, you will have scrolled past it before. But like, I don't have any real exposure to it, so I don't know. I don't know how the talk works. But that doesn't seem like it would be that, personally. I don't think that's what it would be. but I can't say that with any sort of certainty. But as this trans woman has said in her post, I've lost friends, family, jobs, opportunities, money, healthcare, and basic respect from people. I've been harassed, received death threats, and sexually assaulted because I am transgender. And yeah, so like that's it's it's very like I can understand why Brett Cooper feels like it's a double standard. Like I obviously understand it from her perspective why she thinks this is a double standard. Like I can get that, like, because if you look at trans people the way Brett Cooper does, then yes, this absolutely is a double standard, because Brett Cooper looks at trans women as men in dresses. That's how she views transgender women. She doesn't view them as women, she views them as men. So I can understand why this makes logical sense to her. Like if that's how I saw trans women, then yes, that's how I would feel about this as well. But because I know what trans people are, and I understand what it is to be a transgender person, and I understand that trans women are not pretending to be women, it's very much not the same situation. It's not the same viewpoint. Blackface was very much an American thing. I mean, it happened in the UK as well, but it was very much anti-black racism. We're kind of the best at it over here in America historically. Like obviously Europeans have all kind of done some anti-black racism over the years, but I feel like America really took it to another level with chattel slavery and things like that. The UK obviously contributed as well, but again, they kind of moved on from it a bit before we did. And again, I feel like Americans historically took anti-black racism to just another level that even British people were like, that seems like a little much. Of course, I'm not letting British people historically off of the off the boat there, but you know. Yes, we are especially known for our anti-black racism, and we still are. So, you know.
Wow, you know what could be another version of blackface? Yeah, it really doesn't take that much logic to connect the dots. And guess what?
It's funny because I really don't have a lot to say about this specific topic here, about like her argument, because like I get it. I understand why she feels the way she does. Like I understand her view. Like I understand how she views trans people, so I understand why she feels this way about this topic, because it makes sense. Like logically, this is the correct way that she would feel about it. It's not correct, it's not accurate, it's not reality, but it's her reality. It's the reality she experiences on a daily basis. It's the way she is paid to look at the world. And so I get it. I would also feel the way she does if I believed what she believed, but because what she believes is incorrect, her view on this is also incorrect. But there's not really a lot to say on it after that. Like, I've already really explained it and why it's just in bad taste. Like, it's not that big of a deal, but it's definitely bad taste. It's bad form.
Just said, we have also received
the behavior that the cis women were doing. It's just bad form.
Also been physically attacked. We have also received threats. We have also been harassed. We have faced backlash consistently for standing up to your masquerade. So I'm not really swayed by this tweet, but nice try though. Another person said, we know you're both fake. If you want to do not safe for work content, then sure, do it. Hell, I do. But don't get in our space. I thought telling somebody to get out of your space was bigoted. But apparently you can do it. I don't know. I'm just asking questions.
It's different though. It's because trans women are a subtype of women. Understand? Black women are a subtype of women. Both are still women, but the black space and, like, let's say Asian women, the Asian space are different spaces because they're different subtypes. Obviously, I took trans out of there because there are plenty of black trans women, plenty of, like, obviously trans women have a race as well, so I just took them out of that example because it didn't really work, because it was just they would overlap in ways, you know, because the Venn diagram would be a Venn diagram and not two separate spaces. So the reason trans women can say get out of our space but cis women cannot is because the space of cis women is the space of women, right? So because cis women is just not trans women, right? So it's women is the space that cis women are complaining about being invaded by transgender women. So like women's changing rooms, women's locker rooms, the women's section at Walmart. Like these are places that cis women have complained, oh my god, why are there trans women here? Get out of our space, blah, 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 blah. Trans women also need those spaces because they are women. If these spaces were specifically designated for cis women and trans women, if we had cis women changing rooms and trans women changing rooms, then they wouldn't have anything to say because we have different spaces, right? But they don't. We have women's changing rooms and we have men's changing rooms. And trans women are women, so they use the women's changing room. So they're not invading anybody's space because it is also their space to occupy. Now, the difference now is cis women are now invading trans women's spaces, which is a subsection, right? Cis women would be a subsection, trans women would be a subsection, right? Are we following the Venn diagram here? Are we following the graph I'm drawing out? So we have women as a big ball, right? And then in that big ball, we have a bunch of little balls, right? We've got cis women, trans women, black women, white women, gay women, straight women, bi women. We've got all the women, right? But they're all in the big ball called women, right? All of these women in this big ball use the women's restroom, use the women's locker room, use the women's changing rooms. They use women's spaces because they are all women. Now, not everyone in the women's spaces, though, can use all of the same spaces, right? In segregation times, black women couldn't go into the same spaces as white women. Despite the fact that they were both women, they were segregated based on their other traits, right? So here we are. Trans women have different traits than cisgender women. So now we are interspersing into each other's spaces, right? Trans women don't walk around claiming to be cisgender. That's kind of why they have the term trans, to talk about themselves. So it's very much not as equivalent as she's trying to claim it is, because trans women were never invading anybody's spaces. They were going into the spaces they have every right to occupy. And now cis women are, in fact, invading trans women's spaces by pretending to be transgender. Obviously, the logic falls apart because Brett believes that trans women are pretending to be women and not that they are women. As we have discussed, that is where her viewpoint comes from. So in her perspective, she's right, but she's wrong in her perspective, so it doesn't really work.
Trying to understand here. I'm really trying to understand. I'm listening and learning is all that I'm doing. Another commenter said, this is harmful as hell to trans people to bait like this. You will have to stop at some point. I mean, like, guys, the comments go on and on. It is hysterical. This video has like 15 million impressions at this point. The comments are so good. Another one said, I wish nothing but pain and suffering on YouTube for co-opting our identity to make money doing porn. You wouldn't last a day in our shoes, and I pray to God that you experience a fraction of the violence that we do. Another person said, this is so gross. You don't get to cosplay as a trans.
Okay. Let's not wish violence upon people. Let's not do that. But we are on Twitter, and trans Twitter is a very toxic place to be. Not the best place to go if you want to talk to reasonable trans people. There are some there, but trans Twitter is a toxic location. I would not recommend visiting it. So we're not gonna wish the sufferings of trans people onto cisgender people. However, these cisgender people have put themselves into a transgender space, so when they start to experience the same sufferings as transgender people, they don't get to complain. That's the cherry on top, is if you want to walk around pretending to be trans, when you get hate crime for being a transgender woman, you can't say nothing about it. You chose to be here.
Trans person and then post openly transphobic shit for profit, and they do not realize how ironic the entire situation is. This cannot be healthy, unlike Rough Greens. Rough Greens is...
I do love her transitions into her ads. I gotta give her ad read credit.
And guess what? They're not being very kind or inclusive. Shock of the century. Another commenter said, people like this need to hang in the gallows. Another one quote tweeted and said, I hope you die horrible deaths, cisoids. Choke on the dildos that you have in your pants, and I hope you suffocate slowly. Last one, I've always wanted to curb stomp two people at once with both feet. I don't know about you, but they seem really lovely and very well adjusted.
You're on trans Twitter. What do you expect? Reasonable people? You're in the wrong place for that.
Very stable. Per usual. Now, while I don't think that this is going to completely cause people to change course and have some kind of great awakening where they suddenly start respecting women's rights again and realizing how illogical all of their rationality has been, I have to say that I really like the fact that they are experiencing just a teeny tiny taste of what we have been experiencing for the last few years, even though what they're experiencing lacks all substance and is a product of their own ideology. Because having your gender, the literal core of your very being, all of your biology be mocked and taken from you isn't really fun. I mean, you are angry enough to threaten to kill these women, and it's
not a matter of having something taken from them. Obviously, I'm not a trans woman. I'm a trans man, so I don't know the exact sufferings and stuff that trans women have to experience. It's very different. Trans men and trans women have very different experiences when it comes to transphobia. We are treated very differently by transphobic people and by the world. Trans men tend to pass a lot faster, so we don't tend to get the same type of treatment. We're also seen as poor and lost. We're seen as like, we're infantilized because we're seen as like mistaken women who are just lost and have lost themselves. And, you know, whereas trans women are seen as these dangerous, like dangerous predators, you know, right? So they're seen as like dangerous men trying to take over women's spaces, whereas transgender men are seen as these poor women who are just lost their way, and oh my god, these poor confused people who are just mutilated. And, you know, like, so it's very different transphobia. So I obviously can't speak to it from the perspective of a trans woman because I've not had that experience. I'm not a trans woman, but I do know plenty of trans women, and I do know what it's like to be trans. And it's just, it's not what she's making it out to be. Like, what these, I need her phrasing again.
The literal core of your very being, all of your biology, be mocked and taken from you.
It's funny for her to say that trans men and trans women don't know what it's like to have their biology be mocked, when we literally spend all day every day listening to people talk about how mutilated our bodies are and how gross we are, and like all of this negative talk about our biology and about our bodies and about our being, our very essence. It's kind of funny because Brett Cooper is very much a, oh, mutilation, blah, blah, blah type person. I just think that's a little funny, but this isn't, but in terms, in context of the topic of, you know, the porn stuff, trans women aren't upset because they're being mocked. It's not that their biology is being mocked. That's not what they're upset about. Obviously, what's happening is cis women are faking the biology of trans women to feign being trans women for money. That's not what trans women are upset about. They're not upset because you put a dildo in your pants and pretended to have a fake penis, right? That's not what they're upset about. They're upset because trans women are killed all of the time for being transgender. It's not a funny joke. It's not a funny way to be. It's our very existence as trans people that walking around as ourselves puts us at a risk of being harmed by others because of who we are. And to watch cis women who should understand what this is like because they are women, to turn around and additionally add extra harm risk to themselves at the expense of an already very marginalized community, one that is the most marginalized at the moment, is just, it's hurtful. It's hurtful and it's stupid is what it is. So trans women aren't upset because you're pretending to be trans, because, oh my god, how dare they fake our biology. They're upset because you're pretending to be a group of people who get killed every day for being who they are, whose every facet of our existence is shaped by the fact that we are transgender. And to turn around and be like, oh, well, this will make me more money, so let me pretend to be trans. It's just bad form, it's gross, it's disgusting, and it's just rude, quite frankly, and really stupid. Like, so when these women who are pretending to be trans get hate crimed by, or they get blacklisted from their like industry or whatever because people think that they're transgender now, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear them cry and complain about it, because you brought it on yourself, quite frankly.
Isn't really fun. I mean, you were angry enough to threaten to kill these women.
Yeah, I don't agree with death threats.
Even your biology.
I don't agree with death threats. I really don't. I don't agree with death threats. I think that's a step too far.
How we feel. Imagine the restraint and empathy that we have had to not say that to you. It is literally.
Brett Cooper, when have you ever had restraint or empathy for trans women? When has that ever happened? 'Cause I can't think of a time where you've ever treated trans women like people, quite frankly. So,
Literally absurd, and I think we should all give ourselves a pat on the back for being far more respectful in this discourse than may have been in the last 24 hours. Now, even though all of this is ridiculous,
imagine being Brett Cooper and thinking that you've been respectful to trans people at any point in your life. Crazy.
Us all incredibly infuriated and angry, the replies from us TERFs, aka the trans exclusionatory rational feminists or whatever it is, have
Radical
also
feminist.
brought me a lot of joy. Pagliassi the hated replied again and said,
TERF is an interesting term because you can't be trans exclusionary and a feminist. That's not how that works. So
that if these people were any less
that's
self-aware,
that's the term that's used.
they would be on life support. Another person said, I don't know why you're receiving so much hatred. I thought anyone who identified as trans was valid. Yeah, it's kind of the consequences of their own ideology that they're facing, and I guess they don't like it. Another person commented and said, haha, I'm grateful that this whole saga brings...
Because they're not actually identifying as transgender is the point. They're not actually being like, I am actually trans. I actually identify with the opposite sex. That's not what these women are doing. They are pretending to be trans. It's not... Again, Brett Cooper thinks all trans people are pretending, so it's, you know...
uncontrollable comic relief that I never knew existed on this topic. Another person said, this has been quite a surreal, hilarious, and cosmically ironic viral moment. A bit cathartic, even. Laughter is a powerful medicine and also a powerful weapon, and I could not agree more.
Let's watch...
Kamala Harris and Tim Walz